Welcome, everyone, to Sooner Nation, the podcast for Heartland Sports, heartland-sports.com. I'm Matt Hofeld. Sooners Buckeyes this weekend. Lots of opportunity here at the doorstep, literally at the doorstep for Oklahoma football, ranging everything from this game itself to the mass of recruits, probably the biggest recruiting weekend of Bob Stoops' tenure, as our man Donnie Hazelwood has posted at Heartland Sports right now. If you want to see the list of the recruits that are coming this weekend, first of all, it's impressive, but they're there listed at Heartland Sports, heartland-sports.com. And I mean, everything from recruiting to this game. I mean, Oklahoma is putting all their eggs in one basket. Now, the outcome of the game is probably going to have a lot of effect on this recruiting class. You go in there and you beat Ohio State, and all of a sudden, every kid in that class probably wants to be a Sooner. But you drop that game, and some of those kids are still going to want to come. But a lot of them are going to say, well, there's work to be done here. Let me look at Ohio State, or let me look at Texas on the rise now. Let me look at Alabama. Huge recruiting opportunity for Oklahoma this weekend, but you got to take full advantage of it. And that's what's good about playing games like this. I mean, there's not a team, in my opinion, there's not a team in the Big 12 that Oklahoma is going to play that's going to do for Norman what Ohio State's going to do this weekend. There's not a team in the Big 12 that Oklahoma's going to play that's going to come in and they're going to put 800 people in the Lloyd Noble Center for a pep rally on Friday night. There's not a team in the Big 12 that's going to come into Norman and they're going to use up every single one of their tickets, and then they're going to try to buy up more from Oklahoma fans. I mean, those are all things that are happening this weekend. And, you know, when Oklahoma plays West Virginia, Oklahoma plays Iowa State, or whoever they play, Oklahoma State, they play all those people in Norman, and you got tickets that are returned. You got fans that show up late for the game even. But it's Friday, and people are already showing up in Norman, and they've been here. So recruiting is one aspect of this game. The other aspect is the playoff. It's amazing what winning does for you. I mean, this time last week, we're talking about Oklahoma and all the flaws and all the problems and all the things that could go right and all the things that could go wrong. But you go out and you beat let's call a spade. You go out and you beat a bad Louisiana Monroe team. And all of a sudden, people approach the program differently. They talk about Bob Stoops a little bit differently. They talk about Baker Mayfield a little bit differently. They talk about this defense a little bit differently. All because you've done something as minuscule as winning a football game. But now you got to complete it. I mean, you got to go out there and you got to beat Ohio State. And I don't think there's a person in this country that covers college sports that does not believe that if Oklahoma walks off the field Saturday night with a win over Ohio State, that they're not back in the playoff hunt. This game is big for so many different reasons. Right now, and when we said this after Oklahoma lost to Houston to start the season, right now, the worst case scenario for Oklahoma football is that they miss the playoff. That's the worst case scenario. Everything's on the table. Everything that was there on day one when this team took the field in NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas, is still there on the table. And your worst case scenario is at the end of the season, you don't get to make the playoffs. But suddenly you lose to Ohio State on Saturday in front of this host of recruits that are coming in to Norman. And it's a different picture. That worst case scenario is no longer missing the playoff. That worst case scenario is, well, you don't win the Big 12. And obviously you have to win the Big 12 to make the playoff, but suddenly things change where the best you can do is win the Big 12. And Oklahoma has the best of both worlds going on right now, where a shot at the college football playoff is still very much in their reach. The Big 12 championship is still very much in their reach. But you got to beat Ohio State. And if you don't beat Ohio State, then suddenly everything changes. The dynamic shifts. And you go from being one of the best teams in the country to being one of the best teams in the Big 12. You go from competing for a playoff spot to competing for a Big 12 championship. And there's the rub for a lot of Oklahoma fans. Oklahoma fans don't want to compete only for a Big 12 championship. They want to compete for a Big 12 championship in correlation with a run at the national championship. And that's the difference in this whole thing. And it all hinges on 60 minutes of football. There has not been a game of this magnitude in Norman probably since Notre Dame has been here. There's some big games. There's been some big game moments. But none of this magnitude. You're not just having your Sooner media crew that comes through here, all your beat writers. And there's some really good ones out there. But you don't just have a Big 12 crew, guys like Jake Trotter. Again, great guys out there. I mean, you've got national media guys coming in here. You're going to have some ESPN writers in here and television crews and blimps and all that stuff. There's a lot of hoopla around this game. And a lot of people are upset that game day is not going to be here. I don't blame them. You got a bigger game going on, in my opinion, in Louisville and in Florida State. Now, for Oklahoma fans, that's not a bigger game. For Oklahoma fans, the biggest game that's going to take place this weekend in college football takes place in Norman. But if we're able to step out of the boundaries of the Sooner State and cross the landscape of college football, then what we're going to see is you're going to see two top 10 programs, both from the same conference, playing each other, and one of them is going to get leverage over the other. Sure, it has the same implications that the Ohio State and Oklahoma game has, but it also has ACC conference implications, and it also has top 10 ranked program implications. And you're just not going to, you can't, if you're able to put bias aside, and sometimes that's hard for me to do, and I know that's hard for you to do. But if you're able to put bias aside, you'd have to admit that number 2 verse number 10 on the road, mind you, verse number 10, that's a bigger deal. It really is. And this quarterback, Jackson, this kid for Louisville is incredible to watch. But 3 verse 14 is good, but it's not the same as 2 verse 10. And that's what's going on here. We're going to welcome in Chris Plank here in just a few minutes. One of my favorite guys with Sooner Sports Properties. One of my favorite guys with the media in general, but one of my favorite guys that just does OU broadcasting. You recognize Chris Plank if you've been to the games. He's the guy on the scoreboard, showing you some highlights, surrounded by cheerleaders. If you listen to the broadcast, he's the guy on the sideline giving you the updates during the game. He's a guy that's fun to watch because he's a guy who generally loves what he does. He loves the Sooners. He loves his job, and it makes it fun to be around him. So we're going to jump in on Chris Plank here in just a minute. By the way, Austin Kendall, quote out from Austin Kendall this week, today, actually, on Thursday. Actually, Thursday it came out. Comment he made about Ohio State just being basic. We're going to talk to Chris Plank about that. And, Chris is probably, I don't know if most people have read the comment and not really seen the video, but Chris Plank is the guy who asked Austin Kendall the question that solicited the answer that he brought that has rocked the college football world, so to speak. I don't think it has. If you read our article at Heartland Sports, I mean, there's two things here that are going on. First thing you have to admit that the Ohio State defense is one of the better defenses in the country. And granted, Sooner fan has an argument that they haven't played anyone. But having not played anyone, they still have not given up a touchdown in 8 quarters. 8 quarters of football, 2 blowout wins, and they've not given up a touchdown. Put that in perspective. Because Oklahoma didn't play anyone last weekend. And they gave up touchdowns to Louisiana Monroe when second unit guys got in the game. And Ohio State's not even done that. The Ohio State defense is loaded, and they are talented, and they are very good. But the other thing you have to keep in mind here is that Austin Kendall is a very confident kid. And you have to be. I mean, you have to be successful at this level. You can't just come into a program like Oklahoma. You can't come in as a mid-semester transfer, an early enrollee, and work your way up to number 2 on the depth chart and not be confident. When Austin Kendall speaks, he speaks out of confidence. Confidence in who Baker Mayfield is and confident in his own ability. I think they have a really basic defense, is what Austin Kendall said about Ohio State. I think we can go out there, and I mean, Baker, he'll light him up. I'm really looking forward to it. If my number's called, I think I can do the same. It's a kid beaming in confidence. And I don't think this is a comment about Ohio State as much as it's a comment about Baker Mayfield, this Oklahoma offense, and his own ability even. Yeah, they run a basic defense because they're good. They haven't played anyone where you have to run a stunt or a twist or whatever. I don't think Oklahoma is expecting Ohio State just to come out here and be base the whole game. And on the flip side, I don't think Ohio State said, oh, look, we got this backup quarterback saying these things in Norman. Gosh, it's Thursday. We better put a good defensive game plan together. I think all that stuff has already been settled. This is a non-story. It's not going to affect the game. This comment will have so much more to do with the people in the stands than it will with the guys on the field. Oh, I'm sure Ohio State's heard about it. I'm sure they talked about it. But the reality is, if the comments of a backup quarterback is what has to motivate you to play football on the road against a top 15 program, then you got problems outside of what a quarterback said. But I definitely want to ask our buddy Chris Plank about that. In fact, let's bring him in right now. Let's talk some Sooners in Ohio State.
A special guest time now on the Sooner Nation podcast, and honestly probably one of our favorite special guests here to talk a little bit of Oklahoma Sooners, Ohio State Buckeyes football, the one and only Chris Plank. Chris, how's it going, man?
It's going really good, Matt. How are you guys doing today?
I'm great. Great. It's football season is here, and to me, I love all sports. You know me. I'm a sports nut. I'm there whether it's football, basketball, baseball, softball, right? But to me, it doesn't get any better than football season. And honestly, even with Oklahoma going in with a 0-1 record, it couldn't have been any better in Norman than what it was Saturday night against Louisiana Monroe.
Yeah, that was what I think a lot of fans needed to see in order to right the ship from a perception perspective. You know, and by the way, we'll talk stadium all day long. I could with anybody, but to me, the way in which Baker executed, the way in which your receivers made plays, the game plan worked to perfection, I thought it was absolutely a perfect salve for the wound to Houston and a nice preparation for fans who might be a little bit down right now based on losing to Houston to kind of feel confident about this offense and this defense going forward. Again, don't get me wrong. Louisiana Monroe, I understand, I get it, but yeah, it's without a doubt, it was a good palate cleanser, if you will, before the main course coming up tomorrow or Saturday night.
Yeah, and I mean from the very beginning. I mean you're right about the stadium. To walk in and I had seen the stadium before that game, but it's to walk in and see it full. I mean it's just completely different. You stand there on the field and you look up at that south end zone and you think, man, that looks really cool. But then you walk in there and that south end zone is full and the jumbotrons in full working, and it's a totally different scene. And that in itself was incredible. And I tell you what, you know, and I know you and Toby are really good buddies. I've got nothing but good things to say about Toby as well. And even the scene setter that he did, I know it was released early Saturday morning and people saw it, but I thought it was probably the most significant scene setter before a football game that he's ever done really in any sport, because it just, what you're talking about healing wounds and so forth, that set the tone for what I think, you know, and Bob Stoops said it on Monday, and some of the other players said it, that they looked up. They looked up and they saw the stadium, they saw the fans, they felt the crowd, and now they're asking for a little bit more this coming Saturday night against Ohio State. And there's nothing in me, both as a guy who covers the team and as a fan of the team, that would make me think that they're not going to get from the crowd what they ask for if they're doing their part on the field. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and again, it's pretty crazy because if you think back, you know, everyone talks about '08 Texas Tech. But since then, there's been some incredible atmosphere.
Sure.
The only difference has been that the way in which things played out with Texas Tech took it to another level, because you had it was 42-7 at half.
Right.
So obviously that's a different level. Notre Dame was a great atmosphere, a wild setting, an incredible scene. But because you lost the game, I don't think it's held in such high regard as 2008 Texas Tech. So while I've really appreciated and have, I guess in a roundabout way, enjoyed that passion level that you've seen that's grown for former players, and I think even some current players on social media have retweeted it whenever Ty Darlington comes out and says, hey, let's create a ruckus. Let's make something crazy, wild, and special here. And to see the way that it has it's been spread, to see the way that it's been talked about, you can't help but think we're on the verge of something pretty special here on Saturday night.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You know, the Notre Dame game, I think back to that, and I think back to specific moments in that game because the crowd was ready. The crowd was amped and jacked. And, you know, remember Tony Jefferson picks up that fumble and runs it in, and then it's declared not a fumble. But the crowd was there. I mean, that was as loud as that stadium had been until all the air got taken out. Go back to Brennan Clay in that Bedlam game. Brennan Clay runs it in overtime. But
great moment.
That whole that fourth quarter, the drive to tie it up, and then the overtime, the crowd was as electric as it's been in a long time. So you're right, there has been moments since that '08 game, but this is one of those opportunities for it to be epic, and people 20, 30 years from now are going to be talking about this game possibly in the same way they talk, 8 years ago with that Texas Tech game. You have those defining moments where a crowd the team has their moment on the field, and then the crowd has their moment in the stands, and there's the opportunity. But it's not like Ohio State's coming empty-handed. They're bringing their own share of fans, and I think it's going to be every bit what we saw with Notre Dame and their fans traveling. I want to throw this out here, because I realize we're a few minutes in and we haven't even talked the game yet. But I mean, I look at what my son. I have a 20-year-old son, and he sends me a text message. Hey, did you hear Ohio State has rented out the Lloyd Noble Center for a pep rally? And I say, that is cool. That's my response. That's really cool that they do that. But, a younger crowd doesn't realize this happens. Not only does this happen all across the landscape of college football, but Oklahoma regularly does this when they go on the road. Are fans just is it because of the magnitude of the game, or is it because fans don't realize that this is an ongoing thing in college football, that this has become a big deal?
I think that it is twofold. I don't think anyone remembers what happened yesterday, Matt. So I think part of that is short-term memories that have kind of taken over in the world of today. And then the second part of it that kind of I don't think people realize how often this happens. And the way that it was reported was a little bit skewed because, yeah, Ohio State rented out the Lloyd Noble Center, but and yes, they've sold it out, but it's just a floor. It's 800 seats.
Right.
Still impressive. 800 still impressive, but it's not like you've got what's capacity at Lloyd Noble, 12,000, 13,000, whatever it might be. So I am I was like you. Whenever I saw this story and how it just kind of blew up, I went I'm like, really? They've sold out the Lloyd Noble Center, and then you get a little bit clearer of a picture, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. This is the floor seating, and they're doing kind of a pep rally on the floor. Don't get me wrong. There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of Ohio State fans there. But I also think that a lot of this has to do with just not really grasping how often this currently takes place, Matt. And I think that's kind of where part of the I don't want to say confusion, but maybe concern that had been there for a while. I think that's kind of where that jumps in for some fans whenever they first saw that report.
You think there's way too much being made of Austin Kendall's comments?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I was on the desk for that. I probably shouldn't put him in that situation to ask him about Ohio State. If it was a starting quarterback, if it was a starting linebacker, then obviously I understand. But there's so many other storylines that are going on around this game. The fact that that's blown up as we tape this morning is I guess it shouldn't be shocking to me, but I mean I didn't really think that much of it when he said it, and I've heard from so many people like, wow, did you get shocked? I'm like, no, I was kind of thinking ahead. My mind was moving ahead towards our next element. So yeah, I hate it that it's blown up like it has, but again, if you need a backup quarterback's comments to fire you up, I don't necessarily know if that's a big deal.
Yeah, and if you ask Baker Mayfield or you ask Samaje Perine, asking these receivers, maybe even a guy like Jeffrey Mead, who's a starting receiver, but has not made that. He had a touchdown the other night, but no, who had the touchdown, Jeffrey or A.D. Miller?
Jeffrey and A.D. had one. They both had one.
Yeah, that's right. So you got a guy like that who's a starter, but still not has yet had to have that significant moment. Somebody like that says something. Okay, I think you've got a little bit bigger of a deal, but to have a backup quarterback on the desk and to say that, I'm just looking at it going, guys, this is fan talk. I'm sure Urban Meyer's not going to say on Thursday morning, hey, guys, we got to really get our good defense out going now, because this is what the backup quarterback said. But I think that's something that the one thing it does do is it drives the fan bases. I mean, Oklahoma fans are trying to defend Austin Kendall. Now Ohio State fans are trying to defend their defense, which is a great defense, by the way, trying to defend their defensive honor. Or in the middle, these two teams are going, okay, we got to play football. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Yep, I think that's a pretty good way to look at it. Just in this matchup, there's so many playmakers on the field. Both offensively and defensively for both teams. There's so much potential NFL talent. I mean, we're going to watch of the 12 starters on each side of the – 11 starters on each side of the football.
I just assumed you were including kickers.
Yeah, I include on the 11 starters on both sides of the ball. You're talking about the potential with, Oklahoma's potentially got a first-round draft pick starting at left tackle. Mixon and Perine are guys that are going to be second-day picks, if not sneak into the first round. That's just 3 of potentially 5 guys on Oklahoma's starting offense who could end up as NFL guys. Same thing with Ohio State's defense. So there is so much talent that's going to be out there on Saturday. I mean, to me, that's where the excitement starts to build and starts to bubble for me, with all that excitement that's building come Saturday for the talent that's going to be there.
All right, I got to ask you, and you may not have up-to-date information, but Tay Evans, Charles Walker, both kind of on the injury list. Tay Evans has practiced this week. It looks like he's good to go. What are you hearing on Charles Walker?
Well, I've heard on Charles Walker that the same thing Bob said earlier this week that Coach Stoops said during his press conference, that basically everyone is good to go. Their only concern was Daniel Brooks. I know that, there had been some social media buzz out there as well, too, that maybe Charles Walker's injury might be a little bit more severe than some thought, but I'll tell you what, from my perspective, I haven't heard that. I haven't seen that. I haven't heard the buzz around that. So that's out there, but, I haven't seen any of that, and nor have I gone stalking to see if Charles Walker is walking around with a limp or with a cast or whatever it might be. So I would assume that they'll be all guns ablaze and ready to go come Saturday with the health, obviously without a Daniel Brooks. But, they need you need Charles Walker. You need to be 100% heading into Saturday. We saw, I know that Clemson is an unfair comparison, but we saw exactly what he meant to that defense whenever they didn't have him against Clemson. So I think he's a major cog, and I hope he's 100% come Saturday.
Okay, real quick, offense, defense. Let's start with the offense, starting with Baker Mayfield. We already talked about him just a little bit at the onset. Where did you see the biggest improvement in this offense from week 1 against Houston to week 2 against Louisiana Monroe?
Just Baker taking what was there. I thought that was big. I thought they were a little bit more aggressive at the line of scrimmage. That's a credit to Bill Beanbo, and they played Bobby Evans Jr. a little bit more at that right tackle spot with Samia inside, and then as the half went on and into the second half, you were able to use an Eric Wren center and move Alvarez over, so you were able to experiment with quite a bit. So I just thought in the patience of a Baker Mayfield, that made a major difference on Saturday. The other thing that stood out to me was offensively just how precise Joe Mixon looks and how definitive he looks. And that's probably not the best word. Decisive. There you go. Right. When he gets the football, he is decisive about where he's going. He'll have a few cuts here and there to make a guy miss, but when he sees that home man, boom, he hits it. So those were the things that stood out to me. You got some more receivers involved. You were able to play a lot of guys, but the willingness of Baker Mayfield to not try to force things, I guess the route running of the receivers was on point. The blocking of the offensive line, I understand the competition, wasn't of an Ohio State caliber, but man, they went out and did what you're supposed to do, and they dominated.
Flip the sides of the ball. The big thing I was looking at Saturday night was the corner position opposite of Jordan Thomas. What do you see biggest improvement? And then I think the defense kind of got a bad rap in a couple of ways. In an opener against Houston, because I felt like the defense did to hold Greg Ward Jr. to 1 rushing yard. I think the defense put the offense in position to win the game, but still there's room for improvement. What did you see the biggest improvement on this defense, and what's the key thing that you're looking at there?
I don't know if it's really, Matt, to say improvement, but it's just to see some guys, because I think seeing Neville Gallimore and the role that he played, I thought that was encouraging for fans. I think that the performance of Caleb Kelly was one that is encouraging and fired fans up, and understandably so. I think Parrish Cobb getting more time. Kerry Cooks is our guest on the Assistant Coaches Show, and that'll be on the Sooner Radio Network Thursday night. But he seemed to be very complimentary of the way that Cobb played. But again, you got to remember, this is still a true freshman playing a corner position, and it's going to take some time. Not a redshirt freshman, not a guy that's had a year in the system, a true freshman. So I think from that perspective, if you were to ask me what stood out, I think it was finally getting to see some of these guys and their performances, and really how they handled the situation and handled the extra playing time. I thought that was absolutely massive on Saturday.
Who do you expect to see line up opposite Jordan Thomas, that corner, on Saturday night?
I think that it's going to be Parrish Cobb. I think it's going to be Parrish Cobb, much like it was on Saturday. This team knows what they have in Dakota Austin. So, to me, I think Parrish Cobb is going to be that guy that you'll see come Saturday night.
All right, Chris, Sooner Nation podcast, Chris Plank, one of our favorite guests, and I think you for sure hold the record for most consecutive appearances on the podcast, going back to the NCAA tournament.
Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, let me ask you real fast, two things before we cut you loose. Number one, give us a couple of keys to the game for Oklahoma, and then tell our listeners how they can get your pregame coverage, how they can follow you on Twitter, and all that stuff for Saturday.
All right. First and foremost, I think key is running the football. Get Samaje, get Joe Mixon involved. I think you're in good shape come Saturday. If Oklahoma can run the football, they're going to win the game. I think if you looked at the combination of the two backs for, oh my gosh, softball superstars walking through, right in the middle of our interview, Flawley Aviu and Sid Romero. I think if you were to, if they're to outgain the backfield combination of Ohio State, then I think Oklahoma wins the game. The second key I would say is no turnovers. You cannot turn the football over. If they don't turn the football over and they can force a few from Ohio State, they're in good shape. And again, we've got complete pregame coverage starting at 4:30 on Saturday. That's 4:30. And a reminder to all of your listeners that you can listen to all the games on the TuneIn Radio app. So you can listen for absolutely free on TuneIn Radio. So just download that app and give us a listen, and we'll have some excitement coming, man. I'm really pumped for this atmosphere on Saturday night. I think it's going to be a super environment. I think it's going to be a fun game, man. I can't wait to get to game time.
Hey, well, thanks for overcoming the distraction of the national champion softball players walking through.
Hey, anytime those two superstars come by, you got to give them a shout-out. So thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, take care, Chris. We'll see you, buddy.
See you, man.
The one, the only Chris Plank, ladies and gentlemen. So thankful to have him come in and join us and do what he does. Honestly, probably, I mean, the most appearances on this podcast, I mean, hands down belongs to Chris Plank, and can't say enough how thankful we are of the time that he affords us to jump in here and talk with us. Now, we got to talk about this game for just a minute, and I agree with everything that he said leading into this game, particularly on the defense and the injury situation. The one guy that you have to have in this game is Charles Walker. You have to have him. And he did go through practice on Thursday. He was limited, but he went out there. But there's no way around it. Oklahoma has to have Charles Walker. Because defensively, your game plan is you have to stop the run. And you have to have Charles Walker to do that. There's a handful of games on the schedule this year. I mean, obviously you want Charles Walker in every game. I mean, he's that kind of talent. 6'2", 304. You got to have him. You want him. But when you look at a handful of games, when you look at the Houston game, when you look at the Ohio State game, you look at the Texas game. I mean, he is a must-have in those games. And Oklahoma's success Saturday night will hinge a whole lot on big number 97 being in that defensive line. Oklahoma has to stop. They have to stop Ohio State on the ground. You can't let JT Barrett have it both ways. And I believe that their game plan will be very similar to what they did against Houston. You want to contain the quarterback. You want to keep him between the tackles. You want to funnel everything up the middle. You want to limit the run game. And you want to force JT Barrett to do what Greg Ward Jr. did. I mean, you want to force these mobile quarterbacks to beat you with their arm. And if they can do that, then kudos to them. But your best chance at beating them is to make them one-dimensional. And it's always, always easier to take away the run than it is the pass. Taking away the run means you knock the offensive line back, you plug some gaps, and you contain. Taking away the pass means you've got to roll over a safety sometimes. It means you've got to blitz just right. It means that you've got to get your hands up if you can't get to the quarterback. You got to get pressure in the backfield. There's so many different aspects going into stopping the pass. That's why when it works, when it's clicking, the spread offense, the quick strike passing offense is really, really difficult to defend. Because you got to have everything going right on any given play. But you take away the run, And what Ohio State wants to do is they want to come into this game and they want to be very, very physical. And right or wrong, Oklahoma has gained the reputation over the last few years of not being a physical football club. And Ohio State's going to come in, they're going to test Oklahoma's manhood. Very much in the same way that the Longhorns did last October, very much in the same way that the Clemson Tigers did back on New Year's Eve, and very much in the same way that the Houston Cougars did 2 weeks ago. And that's what I'm saying. There's so much in this game. There's so much at stake here for Oklahoma. You beat the number 3 team in the country, and you beat them at their own game. You're more physical than Ohio State is. And people are talking differently about you. Suddenly they're going to talk about the playoffs, and they're going to talk about Clemson. They're going to talk about Florida State. They're going to talk about Alabama. And they're going to say in that conversation, don't forget about Oklahoma. They're going to say things like Bob Stoops has really done a good job over the last 2 weeks at fixing some of the problems within this team. They were exposed in week 1, and look what they've done in week 3. They're going to say that kind of stuff. But if you lose this game, then it's going to be all about the same old, same old. Still got that problem of not being physical. Still got that problem of not being able to run between the tackles. Still got that problem of just getting bowled over. Still got that problem of containing a quarterback. And, everything, it's just everything. Perception goes on a week-to-week thing. Offensively, Oklahoma's got to do exactly what they don't want Ohio State to do. They've got to run. And if you saw any of Ohio State last week against Tulsa, Tulsa had some success running the football. And they don't have anybody to the caliber of Samaje Perine. They don't have anybody to the caliber of Joe Mixon. Now, Tulsa only scored 3 points. They gave up, 48? But at the end of the day, they had some success. D'Angelo Brewer averaged 3.9 yards a carry against this team. And where Ohio State dominated Tulsa was in the turnover battle. Dane Evans throws 4 interceptions. That's you can't overcome that. But 3.5 yards, D'Angelo Brewer averaged 3.9 yards per carry. They only carried the ball 15 times, but still, 15 carries, 58 yards, 3.9 yards a carry. If that's what you have to do to win, and that's Big Ten football, they say 4 yards in a cloud of dust? Guess what, guys? 3.5 yards, 3 plays in a row gets you a first down. In Oklahoma, they're going to have to ugly this game up a little bit, and they're going to have to run the ball between the tackles. This will be a test of the physicality of this football team. And then Baker Mayfield's got to do exactly what he did last week and stay away from what he did week 1. He's got to take what's there. He can't keep looking downfield. He can't keep looking for the home run ball every time. He's got to be able to take what's there. If what's there is underneath, then you hit it. If what's there is streaking down the seam, then you make a good throw and you hit it. But you don't force it. And I love Baker Mayfield, and I love what he does. I love his moxie. I love his leadership. But it's almost like Baker's trying to create his Heisman moment. And you don't create your Heisman moment. Your Heisman moment comes to you. Like, Sam Bradford's flip in Stillwater. That was his Heisman moment. Sam Bradford wasn't trying to create his Heisman moment. It happened. And Baker Mayfield's got to let things happen. Sooners Buckeyes Saturday night, 6:30. If you haven't been in the stadium, if you haven't seen the stadium, you're going to have to shell out a crud ton of money to get there this Saturday. But it may be worth it. $212 is the average ticket price right now on StubHub for this game. Let me put that in comparison for you. This is what games like this do. Baylor at Rice Friday night. StubHub tickets $64. Kansas at Memphis. StubHub tickets $25. Iowa State TCU $26. Here's a big one. Florida Atlantic Kansas State. StubHub tickets $14. What's happened to Oklahoma State football? 2-0 Pitt coming into Stillwater. 2:30 kickoff. StubHub ticket. Yeah, you guessed it. $14. You can't get to Ohio State? Go watch the Pitt Panthers and the Oklahoma State Cowboys play. It could be worse. It could be Louisiana Tech coming to Texas Tech. $13 ticket price. Texas at Cal, $50 ticket price. Oklahoma, Ohio State, $212. It's one of the most expensive tickets in the country. And I probably just gave StubHub a bunch of free advertising. I probably should have thought that through a little bit better. Big game for Oklahoma Saturday night. There's just no way around it. No other way to say it. And you're like, thank you, Captain Obvious. But it's really easy. I can't. When you've already asked Chris Plank for the keys to the game, there's really not much you can do to go in there and add to it. And I certainly don't want to take away from it. At least everyone in the Big 12 this week, we'll jump into our Big 12 rundown. I do have some thoughts about Oklahoma State and Central Michigan I'll share when I get to that part. But at least everyone in the Big 12 is playing an FBS team this weekend. Kansas is still going to lose. Iowa State and TCU start conference play this weekend. It's going to be really interesting. You've got the race at the top of the conference, which I believe is going to be, at this point, it looks like it's going to be Baylor, Texas, Oklahoma, TCU, Oklahoma State with the puncher's chance here. But the race at the bottom of the conference, that's interesting. Who's going to be the cellar dweller here? Kansas is a bad football team, but Iowa State may give them a run for their money. Baylor goes to Rice. They're going to play in Houston. 31-point favorites for the Bears. I don't know. I don't know if I would take them. 31 points is a lot of points, but Rice is bad. Owls are 0-2. The Bears are 2-0. Baylor's trying to. They're trying to do something. They're trying to make a statement. They've looked sloppy, but their offense, once it gets clicking, it gets clicking. Katie Cannon already has 15 receptions on the year. That's going to be a fun game in Norman. But I don't know if I'd take Baylor by 31. I think if you made me bet it, I would. Honestly, I would. Over-under on this game is 65.5. I think I'd probably be more tempted to play the over-under than I would the 31 points. I just don't know what Rice is going to do. Kansas at Memphis. It's a game that no one's going to watch Saturday morning, 11 o'clock a.m., ESPNU. So there's still talk about Memphis coming into the Big 12? I don't know. I think there may be more talk about Oklahoma and Texas bolting for the Big 10 than there is talk about Memphis coming into the Big 12, but they're still a viable option. They're better than Kansas. I'm all over that. I like Memphis in the 20 there. Another big point spread I like. I love TCU getting 24.5. 24.5-point favorites against Iowa State. I'll take that. This is a bad Iowa State football team. And I emphasize bad. Florida Atlantic, Kansas State. Kansas State had a great showing against Stanford. Then they were off last week. Home opener. I mean, what's not to like about Kansas State against Florida Atlantic? I don't know that I like it by 25 points, but I like them. Here's the line of the day for the Big 12. 2:30 kickoff on ESPN, Pitt at Oklahoma State. I don't see how you don't take Pitt in this game. I don't. I mean, I know I'm a Sooner fan. I get that. And I know you're supposed to say something about conference pride, but this has nothing to do with conference pride. This is just straight up a no-brainer, in my opinion. Oklahoma State's 4.5-point favorites. Panthers are coming in 2-0. James Conner, 39 carries, 170 yards on the season, 2 touchdowns. There are still fundamental problems with Oklahoma State that have yet to be resolved. And I said last year, smoke and mirrors with this team. And I'm the one who said going into the season that they maybe were the dark horse that no one was talking about. But after watching them play against Central Michigan, after watching them sleepwalk through Central Michigan, after watching them fail to run the ball, and after watching Mason Rudolph not be able to be consistent in vertical passing, now I understand why no one was talking about him. This is a fundamentally flawed football team that's got some talent and they've got some speed. But I think they're going to lose. I think Oklahoma State loses this game straight up. Not only do they not cover the 4.5 points that they're favored by, they're going to lose this game. People talking about the Cowboys should be 2-0. Yeah, I mean, you can't take it back. That's 2006 Oklahoma. An Oklahoma team that got robbed out in Oregon. You can't take it back. You're 1-1. You should be 2-0. I get that. But you know what? Oklahoma State played terrible against Central Michigan. If you're a team in contention for the Big 12 championship, you can't drop an egg against Central Michigan like that on your home field. Take that game to Michigan? Yeah. Playing on the road. Last year, that's what happened. It's a gritty, tough win type thing. You bring that game, you bring that into your home field, and you play that bad, that one play defines the game. No, I'm not buying that. It's a bad Oklahoma State football team right now. They can't run the ball. And they can't stop opponents from running it. I like Pitt in this game. I do. Louisiana Tech at Texas Tech. This is interesting to me because Texas Tech is only a 10.5-point favorite in this game. But Texas Tech has no defense whatsoever. And that's what's going to cost Cliff Kingsbury his job. I mean, that's what cost him last week. Go out to Arizona State, literally score on almost every possession, possessions you didn't turn the ball over on. But you could not stop the Sun Devils at all. And you got to beat Louisiana Tech by more than 10.5. Let me tell you about what they think about this game, particularly what they think about Texas Tech's defense. Red Raiders are 10.5-point favorites, but the over-under on this game is 80 points. The over-under on this game is not 80 points because people believe that's how potent the Texas Tech offense is. The over-under is 80 points because they believe that's how terrible the Texas Tech defense is. And you get to this point of the season and you can look at some teams and you can say, yep, they're out Conference play hasn't started yet for these guys, but they're out. Kansas, you're out. Iowa State, you're out. And you got to throw Texas Tech in there. Texas Tech, you're out. For the simple reason that you cannot play defense. Samaje Perine may set a rushing record again this year. And if he does, my money is it happens against Texas Tech. The nightcap Saturday is going to be Texas at Cal. Longhorns 7-point favorites. I think they win it. I do. I think Texas rolls into conference play 3-0. And I say good for you, Charlie Strong. And I've already said this. There's no point in rehashing this. The Big 12 needs a strong Texas. When Texas loses to Oklahoma, it helps the Sooners if Texas is strong. When Oklahoma loses to Texas, it helps the Longhorns that Oklahoma is strong. The Big 12 needs a strong Oklahoma. They need a strong Texas. So give me the Longhorns over Cal, and I'll take that line. Oh, last but not least, Oklahoma at home. Iowa State, 6:30 kickoff, Fox Television. Supposed to be raining. Chance for storms. What that means is the team that runs the ball wins this game. I think it also means it's going to be an ugly game. But you got to pick the Sooners, right? I mean, it's Oklahoma, Ohio State. You got to pick Oklahoma by a field goal. I mean, Uwe Van Schaman's got to be in Norman this weekend. He's got to make an appearance somewhere. I'll take Oklahoma 27-24. 27, maybe 24-21. Maybe 27-24 is too high scoring, but nah, that's what I went. That's what I said. That's what I'm going to go with. 27-24 Sooners. Hey, thanks a lot for listening. Make sure you tweet at us at Sports Heartland. Heartland-sports.com is where you can find us on the website. Hit us up. We want to know. Give us your comments. Give us some of your thoughts. Thanks for listening to the Sooner Nation podcast. Special guest, Chris Plank. Thanks again for hanging out with us. Have a fun college football weekend, everyone. Boomer Sooner.
When I wake up, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. And when I go out, well, I know I'm gonna be